On today's episode, we'll be talking about haunted houses, sleep paralysis, and the Hat Man. These stories and more on this edition of Paranormal Mysteries. Thank you for joining me and welcome. I am your host, Nick Ryan. And before we start today's episode, I'd like to thank all of you for your support and your generosity. And if you enjoy the show, please consider following, sharing, and reviewing the podcast. This supports us by helping new listeners to discover the show. You can also support us at patreon.com/paranormalmysteries or at buymeacoffee.com/paranormal. And if you'd like to share your paranormal encounter on the podcast, you can submit your story through email at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com, through voice message at speakpipe.com/paranormalmysteries, or on our website at paranormalmysteriespodcast.com. And all of these links can be found in the show notes. And with all that in mind, our first listener story comes to us from Adam. And Adam's story is called The Missing Hour. Adam says, "Hi Nick, thanks for the great podcast. It is one of the few things that truly helps a lot of people to try and make sense of the unaccountable. I, for one, have had some truly bizarre experiences throughout my lifetime. I am especially interested in the stories relating to missing time, as my own defining brush with the preternatural is intertwined with this phenomenon. I'll try to make my story as concise as I am able, with as much background information as possible regarding specific details related to the event. I had a job teaching English in Nagoya, Japan, to kindergarten children during 2014, and I had a bit of a commute to get to work. I had to take the subway several stops, transfer to a different line, and then take a bus a short distance, and the last leg of the journey was a short 10-minute walk or so. My usual routine was to take the subway to Hashigaoka Station, where I would meet a coworker and we would ride the bus together. And we would hop off the bus and swing by a 7-Eleven convenience store to grab lunch or snacks for the day. My coworker and I needed to punch into work no later than 9. We would board the bus at the station at 8:21, 15 minutes or so on the bus, then another 5 minutes in the convenience store, less than 10 minutes or so walking, and we would be at work. We would arrive between 8:45 and 8:50, almost every time, like clockwork. One day in the summer of 2014, this was not the case. My coworker and I met up at Hashigaoka Station and boarded the 8:21 like usual. We rode the usual route and arrived at our stop. We disembarked and made our way to the convenience store. We picked up our usual items for the day and left for the school that we worked at. We walked down Senkoku Road and crossed over Ueda River. We would always make small chit-chat on the way, and at no point did we notice anything unusual. And a short time later, we arrived at our school. We came upstairs like nothing was out of the ordinary, and we greeted our Japanese co-teachers. "Morning," we each said, and I remember one of them looking up at me from the office and saying, "You're late." My coworker and I were confused what she was talking about, and so we were casually coming in and going to put our lunches in the staff refrigerator when our boss came around the corner. "Where have you two been? It's almost 10 and the kids will be here any minute." Again, we were really just unsure of what was happening. My first thought was that they were pranking us. I walked around the corner and into the office to look at the clock, and it said 9:45. I stepped into the adjacent classroom, and it said 9:45 as well. I remember heading upstairs to the 3rd floor to get my work shirt on, just feeling so confused and honestly a little bit excited about this whole thing. My coworker was up there with me, and I tried to talk with him a little bit, and just kept getting a lot of, "I don't know, man, and that's really weird." He really didn't want to discuss it. I think it kind of freaked him out. Our boss was a bit angry with us and didn't really buy or understand our story. We still were able to work that day, and everything went off just fine without any further issues or concerns. We didn't get docked on our paychecks or anything because that was our first and only time either of us had been late. There are a couple more odds and ends to this story, which makes it interesting. One thing to note about Japan is that it is one of the most punctual countries in the world. The trains and buses leave exactly on time with no room for error. You can set your watch by it. In fact, if a train is late, you can actually stop by the station's master's kiosk as you exit the train. He will give you a little ticket that basically apologizes for you being late due to the train being slow. Some people think that it could have been some sort of seizure. I am epileptic and take medicine to manage my condition, but at that time I had been seizure-free for years. Additionally, there were 2 of us, and my coworker was not epileptic. Plus, we had left the station at exactly 8:21, and it is highly unlikely that it would have happened on a bus full of people. The next strange thing is that I would usually do a time check when at the convenience store to make sure that we had enough time for the walk. I don't recall exactly what time we left the convenience store that day, but my best estimate would have been around 8:40. This leaves the jump taking place after leaving the convenience store and before arriving at work. Also, Japan does not observe daylight savings time. Oddly enough, this issue went pretty much forgotten about shortly after this. Nobody discussed it or talked about it. It just disappeared, much like the lost hour. I don't have any explanation or even opinions regarding this. It is something which is impossible to quantify. The thing that I have learned from this is that there are a great number of forces at play in the world just beyond the range of our perceptual understanding. Some of these are good, others bad, and some are just mischievous when they cause you to be late for work. I would love to learn the answer for what really happened during the lost hour, but I am also at peace with knowing that as a result of this experience, I have been fortunate enough to have the veil lifted for the briefest of moments, and to have stepped through something that few people even know exists. Keep up the outstanding work, Adam. Our next story of the night comes to us from Charlotte, and Charlotte's story is called Ouija Board Experience and Death Anniversary. Charlotte says, "Hey Nick, I live in Auckland, New Zealand. I love your podcast and have been listening to your podcast for 2 years now. My mother gave me permission to tell her 2 scariest experiences. The first experience occurred when my mother was a teenager. Herself and a group of friends were playing with a Ouija board one night. In the beginning, her friends were talking to their lost relatives. Then they decided to try to contact a young girl who was announced missing recently in the news. Her name was Natasha. They collectively asked Natasha to come forward, and sure enough, she did. The group then asked her where she was. She replied that she was in water. They were all shocked that the missing girl was dead, and that they were speaking to her. My mother and her friends then decided that they were done playing, and as they were about to say goodbye, the planchette started to spin in circles quickly. It then flung across the room, hit the wall, and smashed into pieces. Fast forward 1 week, the news reported that they had found Natasha's body in a nearby river. My mother never touched another Ouija board again. The second experience happened only 4 years ago. My family and I traveled to Wellington, and while we were down there, we decided to visit a shopping center called Kirkcaldy and Staines. We took the elevator to the top, and as we went to leave the shopping center, we had to go down their grand staircase with over 50 steps. My mother totally freaked out. She screamed and grabbed my arm. I didn't think much of it until we got home. I asked her what had happened once we were all alone, and she said that for a couple of months, every time she would go down a flight of stairs, she would get a terrifying feeling, like she was going to fall down them. Eventually, she got so terrified that she visited a psychic, and the psychic told her that she was experiencing the anniversary of her death. My mother had died in a past life by falling or being pushed down a flight of stairs. She finally stopped having those feelings a few weeks later. Thank you so much for reading my story. I would like to know if any of your listeners have experienced something similar. I would love for them to get in contact with me if they have. Keep up the amazing work. Charlotte. Our next story comes to us from Joanna, and Joanna's story is called Man Behind the Curtain. Joanna says, "Hello, Nick. I'm from Portugal, and I love your podcast since I discovered it. I love paranormal stories, so I decided to share mine. Keep up the good work. I've been experiencing sleep paralysis since I was 17. It's always scary since I can't move, and I usually see shadows, which is weird because most of the time, it's pitch black. But last year when we were in quarantine, I had the most terrifying experience of my life. I sleep on the side of the bed that's next to our window. I woke up one night and I couldn't move. I couldn't hear my husband playing PS4 next to me, and I just thought, oh no, it's sleep paralysis. When I looked to my left, to the side of the window with a curtain, I saw a silhouette of a tall man, all in black, peeking behind the curtain. I could see the hand, straight, long, black, sharp fingers holding the curtain, and glowing eyes. I was so scared. I tried to scream and I tried to move. I looked at my husband and finally closed my eyes in frustration. I felt tears rolling down my face, and when I opened my eyes again, the man wasn't behind the curtain anymore. He was close to my side of the bed, and his fingers were pointing at me, almost touching my chest. I closed my eyes again and I tried to move my feet, and I finally moved my arms and opened my eyes, and I screamed and cried. My husband was worried, but I couldn't tell him what had happened for like 30 minutes because I was panicking. I slept with the lights on for the rest of that week. Our next story of the night comes to us from Tara, and Tara says, "Hi Nick, I've been listening to your show for a long time now and have debated writing in. I have several stories, but I figured that I would start with this one. This might be long, so I apologize in advance. My mom passed away in late 2008 of a brain tumor, and I was 22 at the time, struggling with accepting how much her death affected me. From about the ages of 14 to 19, our relationship was very strained because of my stepfather. Without getting too much into detail, he wasn't a good person, and he made my mom choose between me or the marriage. So for those 5 years, we didn't have a great relationship. After we started to rebuild it, my mom would start siding with me whenever my stepdad and I got into arguments. I wanted to start with this to provide some context to my story. My mom always put herself last. She bent over backwards to take care of others around her, and my stepdad was no exception, unfortunately. He barely worked, and my mom was the breadwinner their entire marriage. There would be times when she'd struggle to pay bills. Meanwhile, I was affording my first vehicle that my mom helped me get. As long as I covered the car payment, insurance, and gas, my mom considered my responsibilities were met. However, despite being in school full-time and working 2 part-time jobs, sometimes I couldn't afford the gas. So despite her struggles, she would help me out when I needed it. She would throw me her debit card and tell me to go fill my tank. I would protest, knowing she couldn't afford it, but she would always say, "Don't worry about it." This phrase is important to remember. After my mom passed away, and after the funeral, I was an emotional zombie. I would go through the motions of getting up every day, going to work, coming home, and going to bed. I felt that that was all I could do at the time, because I felt numb. It was made worse when my stepdad pulled another pity me stunt, and I struggled with the idea of if I had some responsibility to him. I debated doing some paranormal investigating to see if I could contact my mom, but at the last minute, I decided against it. In my emotional state, I knew that I wouldn't be able to deal if anything else had been contacted. I was in no state to handle any entities, as my family has a few believers, and we also feel the women in the family seem to have some extra senses. Finally, I decided, if my mom is willing to and able, she will contact me. That night I had a dream where I went back in time and found my mom alive. I spent the dream trying to tell her that she was going to die, and my mom wouldn't look at me. She would put her hand up to me like she was telling me to stop, and at one point she turns to look at me and says, "From the way you're talking, it sounds like it's already happened. Baby, if that's how I go, that's how I go." After she said that, I asked her if I could take a photo of us, and she agreed. I leaned over her shoulder and took a selfie of the two of us. After I took the picture and immediately before I woke up, my mom told me, "Don't worry about it." When I recalled the dream later that day, I knew that my mom had visited me. Thank you for your show and all that you do. Tara. Our next story of the evening comes to us from Lydia, and Lydia's story is called I Think My House is Haunted. Lydia says, "Hi Nick, thanks for the podcast. I appreciate the respect you give in your storytelling without going over the top. I'm a bit of a rambling storyteller, so I appreciate you bearing with me. There's been quite a few I can't explain. Growing up, I had a few encounters, usually with shadow people, but for the past couple of years, my encounters slowly stopped. I've always listened to and watched stories with a healthy amount of skepticism. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras, right? That's changed over this past year. I moved into this house in July. I cleansed it with blessed water, as I like to do a physical and spiritual cleansing in any new home. There's also a creepy basement. Keep in mind, due to my job, that I go almost daily into basements and crawl spaces without hesitation. It was built in the 40s, and according to the graffiti in the basement, it's been rented out to college students for over 30 years. As for the experiences, it started with the cats. There's an attic turned into a loft, and there's just one corner our 2 cats have been obsessed with. I'll catch them sitting or laying completely still, with their faces just inches from where the walls meet the floor. I used to laugh and check it out with them, only to find no bugs or sounds of rodents. I've never seen anything there actually, even though we do get spiders and carpenter ants from trees outside. Next is my stuff going missing. It's always stuff I use often. At first I thought it was my roommate taking things like my hair gel and not telling me, or I just misplaced it. But the weird thing is, I would find these items days or weeks later where I know I looked, and where I last used them. Even things that my roommate wouldn't know that I use, or where a lot go missing and reappear. Even the last few days, stuff seems to move from where I last put it. Next is a series of nightmares I was having through March. I don't normally wake up from nightmares, and when I do have nightmares, it's when I've been really stressed. Those nightmares also have a consistent theme and imagery. However, these new ones are all over the place, and I always woke up scared. They ended after a very vivid dream where I would encounter a large and furred, 4-legged, demon-like shadowy being, complete with antlers and red eyes. A few days after that, I woke up with sleep paralysis for the first time in almost 10 years. There was deep growling at the end of my bed, and my room was pitch black. Since I had heard weird noises and seen things during sleep paralysis in the past, I told myself that my asleep brain was tricking me and my tiny dog was just snoring. But I can't shake the feeling that something was there, and it didn't sound like Buddy snoring at all. But what really shook me was a few weeks ago when I woke up around 2 a.m. to what sounded like a small child crying, kind of like a kid being overdramatic when hurt. It sounded like it was next to me in bed, and it also woke my cat up who was looking around. The street lamp didn't show anything outside my window near my bed, and my neighbors don't have kids. I went outside to try to find the source, and when I came inside, my cat was acting spooked. I didn't sleep well after that, and my cat did not want to stay in my room. Lastly, a few days after my roommate moved out last week, at about midnight I heard what sounded like someone trying to open my basement door. There's no way an animal big enough could have gotten in, or my cat would have found it, as he sneaks down there when I do laundry, and he's naughty. Both my dog and cat heard it, but neither of them would go into the kitchen where the door is. Keep in mind that my dog is the friendly type that will greet whoever is at any door with tail wagging, hoping for pets, and my cat is the type who is curious and pretty fearless. The shadow beings have been creeping into my peripherals as well, but only when I'm home. I only have a couple of months left here, so I'll leave the entities be. I don't feel particularly creeped out, so I don't want to risk upsetting whatever is here. I hope you and the rest of your listeners are well. Lydia. Our next listener story comes to us from Nick, and Nick's story is called Hatman. Nick says, "Hi Nick, I listen to the podcast regularly and often lament, why hasn't anything like that ever happened to me? But then I realize that it has. I think that I may have suppressed or tried to dismiss it with all that has happened since. I used to live in Melbourne, Australia with my wife and her kids. Initially we were happy and we both worked in the same occupation. However, after a few years we began looking at transferring to another city to get a fresh start, and while the kids were still young enough not to affect their schooling. Eventually we decided on moving to Brisbane. Everyone was excited and we all looked forward to the move. We found a small 2-story house to rent and our things arrived soon after. Everything seemed okay. The kids loved their new school and my wife and I started training at our new location. But after a few months, I was struggling with the new job that I'd been offered, and it was suggested that I return to my old role, but still in Brisbane. I wasn't very happy and started questioning why I was doing all of this. Everyone else seemed happy, but I was just going to be doing the same old thing, just in a different location. I started to have trouble sleeping, and I began making stupid decisions as I was stressed. One evening I got up late at night as I couldn't sleep, and I went downstairs to get a drink. I wandered around a bit to try to relax, and went to the back of the house. I looked out the window and could see down into the neighbor's back room, which looked like a living area. It was lit and I could see quite clearly into the room. I then suddenly realized that I could see a black figure in a hat facing towards me near the edge of the neighbor's window. I did a double take, closed my eyes, and looked again, and sure enough, it was still there. I freaked out a bit and quickly moved out of sight. "This is stupid," I said to myself. I walked further across the room to the back sliding glass door and peeked around the edge. I could still see it, and I was sure it was still looking directly at me, although how it could have known where I had gone is anyone's guess. I quickly shut the blinds and hurried back upstairs, avoiding looking out any other windows. I must have eventually fallen asleep and kind of forgot about the incident. But things in my life soon went from bad to a lot worse. One of the bad decisions I made ended up costing me my job, marriage, and family. I still haven't recovered, and it's been 4 years. I've read that the Black Hat Man can be a portent of evil or bad things to come. Only later, after all these things have occurred, did I make the connection and realize that in my case, that's exactly what happened. A few months ago, I went to a psychic expo and decided I would have a reading, as I've never done it before. I ended up choosing a clairsentient that I was drawn to. We talked for around 20 minutes, and one of the things she said was that I had 2 entities attached to me. One was female and one was male, which she said was quite unusual. But the male did not have my best interests at heart, and she suggested that I get my house smudged to be rid of it. So, is the Black Hat entity still with me? Who knows? I haven't seen anything since the first encounter, but I also haven't gotten back to my normal self yet, either. Take care, and thanks for reading my encounter. All the best. Nick. Our next story of the night comes to us from Charles, and Charles says, I've never had any ghost stories before, and never really believed many of the ones that I've heard, but this is mine. My wife joined the Navy and was stationed in Meridian, Mississippi. When I went to visit her, I found out that the famous country singer Jimmie Rodgers was from there, so we decided to visit his museum. I'm not much on visiting graveyards, so we skipped that part. I didn't own any of his music, so I bought a CD there and was listening to it the whole time that I was in town. Since she was new there and I've never been there, we relied on one of the older models of GPS to get around, as this was before smartphones. We found a Waffle House to eat at, so I saved the location. A few days later, we wanted to go back to the same Waffle House, and since I didn't know how to get there, we used the GPS. Of course, I didn't recognize where we were going, but something didn't seem right, but I kept going. Finally, the GPS said that we had reached our destination, as we were pulling up to a graveyard. I thought, that's strange, and then I looked to the right, and there was the sign. The sign read, "This is the burial place of Jimmie Rodgers," and it was right at the exact spot that our GPS had stopped us, and his grave was right there. And yes, we were listening to his CD while driving, and yes, I left right away. Not necessarily a scary story, but 100% true, and since I don't really go to graveyards, I know that I didn't accidentally type in the address of said graveyard. Our next story comes to us from Lynn, and Lynn's story is called Sleep Paralysis. And Lynn says this, I've listened to only about 10 of your podcasts so far, but I'm hooked. I can relate to a few of them already. I've had several strange things happen to me, but the one that got my attention was one of your first ones about sleep paralysis. Here is my story. I was probably 15, and I'm in my 50s now, so this was a long time ago. I was asleep, I'm assuming on my back because that's how I woke up. I felt someone sit on the edge of my bed, and this is not the first time that it's ever happened, as I've felt that before. It seems to me that I heard a whisper maybe. I don't know what they said, but I woke up. I swear I was awake, wide awake. My body was paralyzed and I was terrified. I was trying to yell for my mom, but I couldn't get my voice to work. Suddenly, my arms raised upwards in front of me like I was reaching for something, or maybe like someone was pulling me up. I didn't do it. They did it on their own. I had no control over my body at all. At that point, I found my scream. I was screaming for my mom, and she came and slept with me the rest of the night. Most people would say it was just a bad dream, but I know that I wasn't dreaming. Lynn. As tonight's edition of Paranormal Mysteries comes to a close, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in, and a special thank you goes out to Adam, Charlotte, Joanna, Tara, Lydia, Nick, Charles, and Lynn for sharing their experiences. And if you've encountered something that you can't explain, you can contact me through email, voice message, or on our website. And all of these links can be found in the show notes. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Friday as we uncover even more experiences involving paranormal mysteries.